Welcome to this Sunday, July 23rd edition of Wasatch Weekends. I'm your host, Ben Roof. On today's episode, we catch up with Mountain Town 2030 about how they're helping to keep our town sustainable. And then we're going to get another Adventures in Coaching with Kim Smith, who's got some advice for how to face change in our careers. But first, a little bit of local news. Our congratulations to newly appointed Summit County Sheriff Frank Smith and Chief Deputy Casey Bates. Frank Smith was unanimously appointed as Summit County Sheriff following last month's resignation of Justin Martinez. Casey Bates is a Colville native who started her career in law enforcement here in Summit County. Thank you both for your continued service to our community. Now, let's take a quick look at the local weather.
This weather report is brought to you by Sun and Ski Sports, your new mountain sports headquarters.
Welcome back to the show. A little while ago, Maddie Evans had the opportunity to catch up with Mountain Town 2030 about what they're doing to help keep our town sustainable in the face of climate change. Let's hear what they have to say.
We're all looking for ways to be more sustainable. That way we're better to our environment, and that way we can see the snow stick around a lot longer, since we all live in these wonderful mountain towns that we know and love. Well, Mountain Towns 2030 and their director, Chris Steinkamp, is joining me to talk about all of the wonderful things that they have coming up. And you guys have an incredible thing taking place in October that people can get involved in.
Thanks, Madeline. It's going to be exciting. We're looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to hearing more about it, because what you guys at Mountain Towns 2030 do is really important, and you guys collect this group of humans from all walks of life to come together and come up with ways where you can be more sustainable?
Yeah, I mean, we are a network of mountain communities all across the U.S. And, as mountain communities are on the front lines of climate change. We're seeing the impacts in our communities every day, whether it's through low snowpack, wildfires, drought, rivers running low. It's a omnipresent threat that we're seeing every day. But it's also an economic threat as well. And so our work is centered around bringing mountain communities together to have these conversations about what we're seeing, the issues, but also how we can all work together to address it more effectively and to set really bold, ambitious climate targets. Because if we're not taking action on climate, who is?
Which is something that's so important and something that's getting a larger voice now. This is something that a lot of people have kind of put by the wayside for quite some time. And now that we've really seen it affect so many places that we know and love, it is important that we take these steps. And so as we're talking about Mountain Towns 2030, can you give us a little bit more information about kind of what your goal is here?
Sure. So Mountain Towns 2030 was started in 2019 by a group in Park City who had been working to really set bold, ambitious climate goals for the community for the past 2 or 3 years. And we realized, at that point that after we got all of these goals passed and the community made this really ambitious commitment to address climate change, that, every mountain community is going through more or less the same process. And that, in order to really meet these goals in the time frame that we have, which is the window is getting tighter and tighter, we really should be sharing this data. So our intent was to work with every other mountain community to say, look, we've figured this stuff out. And many other communities like Vail and Park City and Aspen have really figured out a lot of this. So a lot of what we're trying to do is bring the communities together, have that dialogue, but also build capacity in some of the smaller communities that might not have the resources to do it. So our work is really centered around sharing data, collaborating, bringing communities together, but also bringing all the stakeholders together in these communities. So not just the the elected officials, but their sustainability teams, the ski resorts, the businesses, the nonprofits, to really have kind of a cross-functional conversation about how, as a community, we're going to move forward together quicker.
Now, there's a lot of inspiration that goes into a project like this. Obviously, you guys are a bunch of snow-loving, kind of outdoor enthusiasts. And so was that the main point of inspiration for creating Mountain Towns?
Well, yeah, I mean, the snow and the lack of, or the inconsistent snowpack was the kind of the initial driver. But I think that everyone realizes that, if we don't address climate change, it's an economic issue for all of us. It affects our jobs, our livelihoods, and the future of our communities. So we really need to be doing something about it. And that's the main driver for what we're doing.
Now, if you were to recommend that people make that first step into being a little bit more sustainable and a little bit better to the environment, what would you say that first step is?
Well, I would say get active in your community. I think climate action comes from, policies that are set in the communities and the commitments that are being made. But, those commitments are being made because of the voices that they hear from the community members. So if you really want your community to take really aggressive action on climate, go to the town council meetings, be a voice within your community to help them make those commitments and take the action that's needed.
Now, if people are interested in getting involved with you guys to help make maybe their business have those right steps moving forward, or maybe to raise their voice in their community, how can they get involved?
So Mountain Towns 2030 is a nonprofit, and we work with every mountain community and the stakeholders within it. So visit our website, mt2030.org. Let us know, and we'll be in touch. We've got lots of programs throughout the year that really help you, give you the tools, the actionable tools that you need to really take on climate change in your community.
Now, since you guys are such a newer nonprofit, 2019 being your starting point and kind of the year that you took off to expand into such greater things and reaching so many different mountain towns, what's the history? What drove you guys to come together and form this incredible nonprofit?
Well, I think, as I was saying, in 2019, Park City set this really ambitious goal to address climate change and to reduce emissions 100%. And I think the driver behind that was that we really realized that, this data should be shared. The insights and the challenges that we overcame needed to be shared with other communities. They might not have the resources to do what we did. Because again, we realized that this is something that needs to be solved really quickly. And if every community had to wait and to take on this challenge and do it over a longer period of time, we could accelerate that timeline just by being transparent and sharing the data. And so our whole idea was to make sure that communities are sharing the insights and the challenges and working together so that we can move this forward that much faster.
And something that you guys are doing to bring communities together to share this data is your climate solutions gathering that you have coming up. And so let's talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so we are excited. We meet every year. This year we're coming to Vail on October 18th and 19th, and it's our annual gathering of elected officials, mountain communities. Basically, we'll probably have 50 to 75 mountain communities there from all over the country. Elected officials, sustainability teams, ski resorts, businesses, and nonprofits, all there talking about climate change. But I think what makes this summit really unique is that it's focused on real world solutions. It's not just a lot of talk about the issue and what's going to happen and the predictions for the future. This is about putting real world solutions in place. And again, having communities talk about the work that they're doing, and hopefully it can inspire other communities to do the same.
Now, if there are other nonprofits that want to get involved and be part of the change that you guys are going to make, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Our website is the best way, and our contact information is on the website, and it's mt2030.org.
Chris, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us, giving us all this wonderful information. And now, if people are interested in just coming to the summit that you guys have coming up in October, can they just come and attend and learn from all of these powerful people talking about the same issue?
Absolutely. It's, the attendees are mainly focused on stakeholders from mountain communities, but go to our website, take a look. If it's relevant to you and if you think it would be helpful for the work that you're doing, by all means, please join us. Registration is on our website, and we're excited to be in Vail in October. And thank you to the town of Vail and Avon and Eagle County for having us.
I cannot wait to see what comes of this, and I want to thank you personally for all the hard work that you do. I think what you guys do is really going to save our mountain towns, and one of my dad, who is a longtime die-hard skier in the ski industry, his favorite quote is, "As a skier, we are snow farmers, and if we have a bad snow year, then we have a bad year of crops," and we keep seeing that more and more, and so thank you for making that difference.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Make sure that you check out Mountain Towns 2030. That way you can just see what your community is doing to make a difference. And if you need help raising your voice to have your community make that difference, well, they're a great starting place. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we've got more of the show, so stay tuned.
I am joined now on the couch by Kim Smith of Adventures in Coaching to share with us some more advice on how to improve our careers. So, welcome to the show, Kim.
Thanks so much, Ben. It's great to be back.
Well, it's great to have you again with some more fantastic advice for us. So, last time you were on, we were talking a little bit about teams and how to kind of get teams oriented a little bit and help them succeed. But we're shifting gears a little bit once more to talk about problems. So, we encounter problems in our careers all the time, but they don't necessarily need to be a bad thing, do they?
Not necessarily, although I think a lot of people think they are, right? Oh gosh, the problems are so difficult or insurmountable. How do I get over them?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly can be a thing, but a lot of problems can present us with opportunities too, right?
Yes,
They force us to make change, and there's always a way to come out with some positive change.
exactly. If you have that mindset, which is what we're going to be talking about today, is really how do we shift that, oh, this is such a big problem and I don't know what to do, and therefore we get stuck often when we're in that problem versus looking at something as an opportunity and reframing it as that. I just love this topic because so many of us, whether we're in business or whether it's our personal lives, we can take a look at, anything from this new framework.
Well, and even if it's not necessarily a problem, it can still be an overwhelming task. So in the event that you are facing with a monumental issue, a big problem, how do you recommend starting to tackle something like that?
Yeah, that's the issue, isn't it? So, and I like to say, rather than issues or problems, I like to say challenges, actually. If you can start reframing it by looking at it as a challenge, it no longer has such a negative connotation. And then when you start asking yourself, well, hey, is there another way to look at this? What is the opportunity? And oftentimes we really can't. We're so used to being in that problem and maybe even, down about it, or maybe even in that place where sort of like have this victim thinking where, oh, poor me, I can't do anything about this. Sometimes it's hard to start looking at things as opportunities, and that is where a coach can come in, or you can get feedback from others. Like, what's another angle here?
So if we're trying to change that mindset from, oh my God, this problem is so big, how am I going to get started to tackle it, to, all right, this challenge that's facing me is going to give me an opportunity to really improve my situation or improve my position at work, how would you recommend getting to that point where we're seeing something differently?
Yeah, well, it really is a multi-step process, and you just outlined a bunch of them right there, so you're totally getting this. It's awesome. So, looking at the problem or the challenge, and then thinking about it as an opportunity, and then maybe thinking, like, what are the solutions? Like, what is it that I need to do to create this opportunity, to create the solution? And then thinking about what might be different once you're in that solution. So that's a way to kind of look at it pretty far forward into, I don't know, the future. I mean, it may be only one conversation away, but thinking about the difference can really help to motivate you to kind of continue looking at pushing through the problem and maybe getting out of your comfort zone a bit to ask for what you need, or maybe it's setting a boundary or coming up with some new ideas and presenting it to a leadership team.
So you're recommending a little bit of like trying to see our challenge through to the end and use that success as inspiration to help us work through.
Yes, absolutely. And I highly recommend writing these things down so that you can go back and check in and have an accountability partner. You know, maybe it's a friend or coworker, a manager, a coach, you know, it just depends. But having somebody that can help you kind of think through the obstacles that might be in the way, the roadblocks that are getting in your way from being successful and creating an opportunity from a challenge.
So as a professional coach, if I was facing a huge project and I wasn't quite sure where to start, and it was really like just the scope of the whole thing, I wasn't figuring out where to begin, and if I was, excited about the end of the project, but that's just the hurdle of the project itself, how would you as a coach kind of help me through that first step of getting the inertia needed to begin surmounting that challenge?
That's just that's great insight that you have there, because it is about, figuring out how to take those first baby steps. And me as a coach, I don't always know what your first baby steps are, but I'm going to work with you to try and pull those out of you and then help you to take those and give you the courage, encourage you and empower you to take those steps so that you can walk through that fear. And if that fear is insurmountable, like you were talking about, like you just, you want to get to the end of the project, but you don't know how, then we talk about that fear and what that limiting belief might be that's holding you back from taking those first steps. And often if we just start taking one little step, another one will become clear as we get there. But, also having a roadmap is very important. Doesn't mean that you have to stay on that exact path the whole way, but sort of having an idea of like, okay, I do this first. Maybe I need to get a little more experience over here or some education over there, but then I can take that next step.
Well, and those roadmaps, they don't have to be every single step A to Z, right? It can be A and F, and maybe G and E and a couple together, but like sometimes we just need to get started to kind of figure out what some of those steps are.
Yeah.
So how would you recommend kind of facing those limiting beliefs and some of that fear if you've got a decent plan, but you don't have every single step of the process worked out? And that can definitely leave some people feeling nervous.
Yeah, a lot of us like to have the answers before we start something, which I call like the problem with perfectionism. And sometimes we hold on to like, I'm not going to do anything until the plan is perfect, until I have it all figured out. I'm not willing to go A to F, right? I want to go A, B, C, D. So it's the problem with perfectionism. And can you let yourself, off the hook a little bit and say like, it's going to be good enough. Even if I just take these few steps, maybe I'll run into some more roadblocks and maybe it won't be right. Maybe I'll make a mistake, but that's okay. Because half the fun of the journey is kind of going off trail, right? And maybe like, oh gosh, I'm a little bit lost. And then you find your way back again and think how good you feel once you've maybe done a little diversion and found something you weren't expecting.
Well, and it's hard to learn without those little diversions, those extra challenges too. I mean, something that I've always faced in my life is I am cripplingly perfectionist. Like I am
That's why you smiled when I said that.
People, exactly. I'm 100% one of those people who I have to drill it into myself to not let perfect be the enemy of the good.
Yeah.
And there's so many times it's like, man, I'm not quite sure this will be perfect. I gotta start anyway. I just gotta do it anyway. And it sounds to me like reaching out to you is a great way to kind of help bridge that gap and help get a little bit of outside motivation and outside help if we're really having a hard time getting over that little bit of a hump, that little bit of a limiting belief.
Right, and that little bit of limiting belief might end up being a bigger limiting belief that's affecting you in a lot of different places, and a coach can help you to uncover what that is and to come up with plans so that when you hear that limiting belief talking to you, you can be like, oh, there it is, rather than sit in procrastination or sit in, feeling down about something. Like, oh, there it is. Now here's what I need to do.
To help identify that voice in your own head and tell it to be quiet when it needs to be.
Right. Thank you very much. But we're moving forward.
Right. So if anybody needs some help finding out their limiting beliefs or helping to get over them a little bit, how can they reach out to you?
So I can be reached at kim@adventuresincoaching.com or just go to my website, adventuresandcoaching.com, and I have a little form that you can fill out and send me more information about what you're looking for and what your challenges and what you think your opportunities might be. So love to hear from you.
Well, fantastic. Kim Smith of Adventures in Coaching, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Ben.
And we'll be right back after a short break with a little bit more show for you right after this.
This weather report is brought to you by Sun and Ski Sports, your new mountain sports headquarters.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's episode of Wasatch Weekends. Don't forget to catch us for our Monday edition, where we'll get some retirement advice from Edward Jones and we'll catch up with the Park City Library. Until then, I'm your host, Ben Roof, and I can't wait to see you tomorrow.